Hi kittens, I'm Julie Savone, psychedelic facilitator, integration expert, and your guide for this wild ride, The Inner Trip, 365 days with plant medicine. I've helped hundreds of people use plant medicine, primarily psilocybin, to heal, expand, and step into their next level. But this year, I'm taking it even deeper. For the next 365 days, I'm bringing you with me. I'll be microdosing, journeying, integrating, and exploring what it really means to live a limitless life, with plant medicine as a tool, not a crutch. So if you're ready to feel more alive, more clear, more limitless, and you're down to do it with mushrooms and a little bit of sass, you're in the right place. Let's take the inner trip. Hello, kitten. Today on the podcast, we are doing something that is always much requested, and my intention today is to share with you answering some most common asked questions about microdosing, about psychedelics, about psilocybin, about LSD. I feel like these episodes are always favorites, and I always try to answer at least 3 questions. So let's get into it. And the way I answer or I look for these questions is really just to look at and to see on different sites, like what are people searching in relation to microdosing, to psychedelics, to mushrooms, psilocybin, LSD, and then I also look at some Gemini searches, what's popular on ChatGPT and things like that. But if you have a specific question that you're like, wow, I'd really love her to answer this on the podcast, DM me. I am always so open to answering questions from you, especially as a listener, and it would make me just so delighted to have you ask me a question, so I'm here for it. The first one I wanted to get into actually wasn't a question about microdosing psychedelics, but I think it's important to talk about because the question, microdosing is becoming a more and more popular term now because of Ozempic, tirzepatide, Zepbound, Mounjaro, Wegovy, right? All these like GLP-1s. People really want to know more about microdosing and they're searching microdosing more than they ever have before. But of course, that sometimes kind of confounds my result or the things that I look up for my work in microdosing psychedelics. Same term, different things, right? And that's something we talked about in one of the very first episodes, where microdosing is really just the practice of taking a fraction of a full dose in order to produce the same benefits of a full dose of whatever it is. You can microdose cannabis, obviously psychedelics, these GLP-1s, but without feeling like any sort of impairment. So for psychedelics, that looks like, you can drive, you can see patients, you can pick up your kids and like cook a meal, all of these things, like you're not incapacitated in a way that like, if you're on a full dose of psychedelics, you would not be getting in a car. I do not think that you should be momming your kids, right? All of these things. And for things like Wegovy, Mounjaro, Ozempic, a lot of people feel like super nauseous and super sick on a full dose of those things, so they take a microdose and they still get like the decrease in hunger, food noise, etc., but they don't have those other side effects. So one thing I actually want to talk about is microdosing and psychedelic use when you're microdosing or using a full dose of the tirzepatides, the GLP-1s, etc., because it does change things. So for my retreat cuties, if they are on something like Zepbound, Wegovy, whatever, I tell them the week leading up to the retreat, don't take your dose. And the reason I say that is because, what's really happening is we're delaying the stomach. I'm not an expert in these, so I'm explaining it the best way that I know, but I am not the expert in microdosing GLP-1s, but it's like it retains thing in your stomach. It delays stomach sort of opening and releasing to produce feelings of fullness longer, right? But what that can mean is you're retaining the psychedelics in your stomach for longer, and they're not being processed and like going into your bloodstream, and so it can delay the trip. And the worst thing to happen is to have you, be at a retreat or something, or in a different ceremony, or wanting to have a psychedelic experience. And so you take the mushrooms, let's say, for example, right? And you take a dose that it's a recommended dose, you feel good about it, and an hour or so passes and you're like, nothing's happening. So I'm just going to take more, right? I'm going to take more and I'm going to take more. And really depending on how knowledgeable your facilitator is or whoever you're with, or if you're doing it by yourself, you might think like more is the answer. I just need to overcome whatever like baseline resistance I'm having. That is not true. What can happen is then, 4 or 6 hours pass, and then your body starts to process it, and then you've eaten, pardon my French, but a fuck ton of mushrooms or something, and you're having a really big, intense trip, either a lot later than you wanted to or than everyone else's, and that is not the goal. I don't think that was your intention. So I always tell people, if you're on one of them, don't take them the week of, because then you'll be on the same schedule as everyone else in the group. And what I oftentimes find, I can't explain this through science, it's more of energetic, but everyone sort of starts to come down around the same time, come out of the experience, and or at least feel like they're in a shifted state. Like they're still not, I wouldn't let them go drive, but they're feeling different. And so they go out, land their plane together, and sort of start integrating together, start, having snacks and stuff together. But then if you're on this delayed trajectory because of a GLP-1, then everyone else can basically be done and you're just starting. And a big part of the reason people come to retreats or ceremony in general is for the community aspect. And there's really no community aspect if you're having your own trip delayed by several hours because of one of these compounds. The same thing can happen with microdosing. So I tend to say there's like an on period with microdosing. And again, the goal is to never feel anything. So it's not like you're going to be feeling impaired or like you can't drive or whatever, but you just sort of notice this little sparkle to the world. And I don't mean a literal sparkle like you're seeing things in your field of vision, but just things, colors look a little bit more vibrant. Life feels better. You feel more emotionally regulated and responsive, more patient. You're feeling more creative. So all these things kind of happen in a 4 to 6 window post 4 to 6 hours post microdosing, right? But if you're taking one of these things, microdosing and GLP-1, and then you're microdosing psychedelics, you find that window isn't as predictable. And a lot of people want to use microdosing in combination with something, right? For a lot of people, microdosing and going to therapy, you just have a really good session, right? Microdosing and working on content, you have a lot of creativity. Microdosing and getting some good focused work in. But if you can't rely on your body's awareness anymore of that because your body has delayed these reactions, and it's like, well, you don't exactly know when your stomach is emptying, to which point you don't know when the microdose is going to start to be in sort of its on period. That can become tricky as well. And there isn't really a good workaround for me to give you, because I also don't know when your stomach is going to empty, right? There is always going to be that 4 to 6 hour like sparkle period. I just can't tell you exactly when it's going to be because your body is processing things differently. So something to keep in mind. If you had been microdosing and then you started on a GLP-1 and you're like, I don't know, it's just like things feel like a little bit more erratic. Like I can't figure out when I'm going to feel, that emotional regulation, the increase in creativity, the increase in energy. The issue is the delayed onset because of your GLP-1 or, whatever you're taking. So something to keep in mind. And this isn't for me to tell you, like, don't take your GLP-1. I just always want to be clear with people. Because some people are like, oh, it's not working for me anymore, or shalala. It's like, well, it would still work, but like you're altering other things in your body as well that's leading to a different response. It's like, for my cuties who come to the retreat, like such a good example, a woman came to the retreat, doesn't really take anything, maybe some vitamins, isn't a big drinker. Her experiences, despite her dosage being lower, were like much bigger compared to someone who had like long-term SSRI use, also regularly took stimulant medication for ADHD, obviously had ADHD. Like there were a lot of different factors that the best way for me to describe it is like her body metabolized the things so much faster, and there was just more competition at like the binding site for her receptors. So her trip, despite taking more, felt shorter and less intense than someone who took less, but felt a really big response because there wasn't anything competing in it. And she also didn't have a very like one of the most textbook cases that I've ever seen of ADHD. It's like, there is no pretending here. This is not for the Adderall script. Like, there is ADHD. I'm not saying I think that about everyone, but I do think for a while that we were wildly overprescribing Adderall and Vyvanse. But this girl, she definitely had ADHD. So, just something to think about. Another one that came up again of like, which companies offer subscription services? Where can I buy microdosing supplements? What are the top rated microdosing companies? Where can I find reliable sources for microdosing? Blah, blah, blah. So a lot of it around sourcing. And I will say that's a super valid concern because
a lot of companies and third-party independent testing recently were shown to either not contain the amount of psilocybin that they advertise or really not contain psilocybin at all. This is particularly true as it related to like gummies or chocolates. I also find those things to be really tricky. I believe I've said this before on here because let's say you get a chocolate bar and you're eating a square of the chocolate bar. The chocolate bar could have the thing that it said it was going to have in that one serving size, like maybe one like long rectangle was supposed to be a gram, and maybe it is, but maybe the psilocybin is concentrated down in one of the other blocks. So some blocks have like barely any psilocybin, and then one you're just gonna have like get your, pardon my French, but like, get your shit rocked with the 4 grams and thinking that you're like taking this slowly, etc. I don't like it. That's a big reason why I am a purist, why I only work with like real, whole, dried mushrooms, because it is what it says it is, and you can really control dosage and things like that in a way that you can't, or not reliably so, with other mediums like chocolate bars or gummies. So I work with 3 companies when it comes to microdosing. I don't have anything to do with the sale, distribution, etc. of microdoses because grimoire questions is hard. So I just wanted to say that and have you be aware that like, hey, you if you are growing your own mushrooms and like want to use them, it's just really follow the instructions. Be careful because you can like hurt yourself and it can become dangerous, and there's something to growing mushrooms for sure. It's not like we're just growing daffodils out there and it's all going to turn out easy peasy. So I don't want to have anything to do with that. And these companies that I work with are based in California, or there's one for my Canadian cuties. I actually do have another company that I could for people in the Netherlands, but that's just so rare for like the algorithm and who it directs me to. So unfortunately, I was just connecting with a woman in Australia and I was like, oh, I would, this would love to be able to work with you. However, I don't have anyone. So if you're listening to this, the companies that I work with are in the United States and then one in Canada. And so they're all in California. What I love about these companies is I know the people who are heading the companies. Like I know them personally. They're good friends. One of the people is one of my favorite facilitators to sit with. When I, have someone facilitate a journey for me. So I know them. Which also means like, even though it's not my company, I'm not shipping, but if anything should happen, like in the mail or etc., I always am like, hey, this is this person, they ordered this, or like there's a tracking number, and like, where is this? Well, that's all to say, even though I'm not the one, I don't have anything to do with it. I didn't ship it. I didn't make any money off of off of shipping it either. I did, I know them in case something could happen. So you don't just feel like you're a cog in the wheel, right? Of like, oh, are they actually going to get back to me or not? No, they definitely will. They'll always make it right. So I like having that personal relationship. But also I've been to their facility. Like I know where they grow and that it's exactly what it says it is, and that they monitor strains and growing conditions, and that the capsules are exactly what they say they're going to be. And so I also always tell people when we work together, like, I'm not a dictator. If you want to go with a different company or you grow your own or whatever the case may be, that's fine. Right? Make sure, we're doing some sort of measuring. That's a big thing that I like about the companies I work with. The companies that I work with have capsules that are all pre-measured. So I know exactly when we're talking about dosage, like what we're really talking about. So make sure you have a mini scale or something. Like a kitchen scale is not going to cut it. So we could really make sure the dosage is correct so you can be taking a true microdose, and we can really get some great data around like what is and is not working for you. Because if you don't measure it, then like I can't help you. Data is super important. Data is super important. And I also tell people, like, if you're not having a good experience with the capsule, like I can't really speak to why that is if you're not using one of the companies that I work with. And that's a big thing for me, because the companies that I work with, everyone's like, oh, I love this. Like, I love these capsules. I love this process. I love this experience. I work with other people who are like, well, I'm going to use these ones that I have. And they're like, oh, I don't know. I don't feel good. Or another thing I hear a lot is like, I feel weird. And it's like, well, I would encourage you to use my capsules because I don't know that product. And to be completely honest, a lot of companies at this point have sent me samples and said, oh, like recommend our microdosing company to your clients. And I've tried a lot of different microdosing companies out there, like a lot, and I've landed on these 3. One has been like my OG from the very beginning. Another one, because I met these facilitators, I really like their product. I like them and their integrity as people. And one is my Canada option. But it's all to say these companies, like, have asked that I don't just put out their information, on the internet. They've had websites that have been, the issues have been happening there. Like it's an integrity thing too on my end. It's not like some sort of grab to get you. Because again, I don't make any money on the sale of these microdosing capsules. Like this is not, I have no stake in whichever company you use either, because you can use a company that I don't recommend. But they've specifically asked me, like, we run into issues, like, don't just blare this on the internet. And so it is something where once you sign up for one of my programs, you have all the ordering information. You have all the ordering information for all three. If ever there's updated ordering information, I send it out to all of my past clients. So it is something where, like, you get all the information when it's clear that you're intentionally going about this process. And I also say, like, you want the capsules, but like microdosing and not on its own is not enough. I've made this point several times. When you microdose and you pair it with intentional relearning tools, when you do the quote unquote work alongside it, that's when microdosing really changes your life. But taking a microdosing capsule every day, like an Advil, is not going to do anything in the long term for you. A lot of ones went over benefits. Like what are microdosing good for? What's microdosing good for? What are the commonly reported benefits of microdosing? Microdosing for enhanced focus. So enhanced focus is a big one, right? Microdosing for enhanced focus is huge. Microdosing for creativity, microdosing to support someone in coming off of unwanted medications, whether that be SSRIs, SNRIs. It could also look like microdosing to help people come off of stimulant or non-stimulant ADHD medication. So these are mental health medications, right? It's not like microdosing to come off like, I have a heart murmur. Can I use microdosing to come off that medication? Not to my knowledge. It's more like, hey, I'm using these medications for my mental health. I would like to stop taking them because there are a ton of side effects, or I can tell that I'm not really getting to the root of whatever it is for me, whether that be anxiety, depression, OCD, PTSD, addiction, etc. And I actually want to do some root cause healing. I was scrolling to find this picture. So microdosing for greater self-acceptance. Another one we were just talking about is microdosing to be able to feel more in control of like the depth of your emotional experience. So for instance, this woman for my last retreat, it said, I want to redevelop a spiritual practice. And there's been a lot of resistance and avoidance when it came time for her to actually do it. And so we were exploring what's this avoidance around, and she's, worried about all that needs to be unpacked from a traumatic, like religious past. And so I said, okay, well, let's set the intention. Like right now you're just exploring what feels good. Like, how do you want to interact with a higher power? Like what formats feel good for you? And then you can also say, like, I'm available to, open the door to all that gets to be unpacked, but I'm not here to like let a monsoon out. And microdosing makes that easier. There's this like little bubble of response between you and your feeling. So instead of feeling like your feeling is going to drown you like a huge wave, right? The bubble is controlling to what degree you're interacting with the feeling. So it can make big feelings easier. Inviting in more ease. It helps people chill out, right? To like not be so in their head, not so much thought looping. It can bring a sense of like conscious awareness of like, oh, I can see what's going on in my head. Interesting. Like that's a thought I no longer really want to subscribe to. It's really helpful for creating new habits, which is the foundation of my program, Unbreakable. It's a habit stacking program. It's also great for building a business, which is the foundation for, Limitless Woman. And my program, The Comeback, which as you're listening to this, there's still 3 more days to sign up for the comeback. You can totally 100% reset 2026. If I was able to generate more money in 4.5 months in 2026 than I did in all of 2025, think what you could do with like a Control-Alt-Delete 100% reset right here and right now as we're going from Q2 to Q3. So it's a great tool for that. It brings in more presence. It's just naturally easier to focus on what's in the moment when there's less like feedback and noise from your default mode network. That's that Regina George part of yourself. You could increase a sense of oneness. And like, understanding that we're all connected to one another, sort of this like conscious connectedness, right? Of like understanding my actions impact my neighbor, and the things that I do that, are mean or cruel or judgmental to someone else, I'm actually doing to a part of myself. People experience a less overwhelm. They experience they come back to themselves in a way, right? So for a lot of people, especially like moms or people who have felt like they have directed so much attention to something like building their career, and then they think, who am I in all of this process? That process of discovery can be facilitated more easily by microdosing, building a greater sense of trust, feeling like they can bounce back from rejection, adversity, losses more easily. There's a greater sense of feeling versus suppressing. It's easier to give yourself grace. There's a sense of inner peace. There is more focus and clarity and less overwhelm. Ease is a big word I hear all the time. Like, it just felt easier. Life felt easier. Enjoying the little things. That's that sense of awe. Honestly, one of the biggest things I hear all the time is just like, this changed my life. This changed my life because they felt a different sense of connection with their partner. That like everything else they had been doing in terms of therapy and coaching, etc., finally clicked. They can break rumination patterns. They feel more intuitive, have a greater sense of gratitude, more emotional consistency and regulation. They can work and focus for longer periods of time. The quality of thoughts and their overall mindset shifts. They decrease shame and guilt. They feel better mood and lack of resistance to doing things that once they had put off for a long time. It can naturally help them reduce the intake of unwanted substances. People feel more self-expressed, like they finally discovered their purpose. And I don't mean doing mushrooms. I mean, writing the book or creating a business or making a nonprofit. I have someone doing that right now, right? Let's see. And ultimately, a lot of people have a lot more energy. I'll say that's true for me as well. So that is just one page that I had written down because I'm writing my book of things, right? That's just one page. There's so many more. I have so many screenshots. So there are a lot of benefits of what you can do with microdosing. There's a lot available to you with this practice. So if you ever have any question, can microdosing do this? Oh, you know what? A big one I forgot to say is like decrease chronic pain. I work with a lot of people with fibromyalgia and things like that. So that's a big one too. But if you ever have a question like, can microdosing do this? Go ahead and ask me. I'm happy to answer. It is really me and my DMs. But thanks so much for joining, kittens. This was such a fun episode. I love answering the most commonly asked questions. And my integration for you is to send me something that you've been wondering about psychedelics, about mushrooms, about LSD, about this work. It can be something as simple like, could this work for me? And I think that it might not because I am, I don't know, like I talk a lot about women, right? A man. Yes, it can. Am I maybe the coach for, maybe not, right? But happy to connect you with male facilitators or a different facilitator, depending on what you want. Because this work for me because I'm, I don't know, over 60. Is it safe for me to do if I have a heart condition? An important thing to look at, because for larger doses especially, probably not. Depends on what the heart condition is, of course. But that's my integration for you. Send me something that you've been wondering, right? A question that you have. Or if you don't have any questions, would love to hear your experience with mushrooms and share a benefit that psychedelics have given you. That's my integration for this weekend, and I will see you soon.
That's the end of today's trip. But remember, the real magic has always been inside of you. If this episode landed, send it to a friend who's ready to step into their next level. And make sure you're following the show so you never miss a dose. I'll be back again soon with another day on the path to your most limitless life. And until then, trust yourself, follow your intuition, and keep asking, how good can it get?